Some villages bury their secrets in the ground. Others bury them in blood. The village of Ayanfe woke each morning to familiar sounds: roosters crowing, pestles pounding yam, elders whispering stories that had been told so many times they began to sound like truth. But that morning, a boy woke to hunger. Adiwale sat on the edge of a cracked mud bed inside his mother's hut. Thin rays of sunlight slipped through the broken window, landing on his school uniform hanging from a rusty nail. It was torn, faded, and carefully washed. It was the only one he owned. Outside, the red earth waited. He tied his worn sandals and stepped out. The air smelled of dust and palm oil. Children ran past him, laughing loudly. Children whose parent could afford laughter. His mother, Aya Adiwale, bent over the cassava field, her back curved by years of hardship. "Mommy," he called gently. She looked up and smiled, a smile too small for the weight she carried. "You will be late for school," she said. Adiwale nodded, though they both knew there was no money for transport, no money for books, and barely enough food for the day. Still, he walked toward the school, because some dreams refused to die, even in poverty. As he passed the village square, laughter followed him. "Look at the king of hunger," a boy shouted. Adiwale lowered his head. Silence was a shield. What the village did not know, what it had long forgotten, was that the blood flowing through Adiwale's veins once ruled that land. And by nightfall, something ancient would begin to remember. Wealth can buy silence, but it cannot buy peace. The compound of Chief Bamigbade stood like a kingdom inside Ayanfe. High walls surrounded it, carved wooden gates guarded it, and men bowed whenever its owner passed. Inside the compound, Marown Cage sat alone. Gold bangles rested on her wrists. Coral beads lay gently against her chest. Her Aare and buba were stitched in the city, finer than anything most village women would ever wear. Yet her heart felt heavy. She had returned from Lagos only days earlier, leaving behind the noise, the lights, and the strange loneliness that followed her everywhere. In the village, people believed wealth brought happiness. Marown Cage knew better. Her father entered the room, his presence commanding attention without a word. "You will attend the festival tomorrow," Chief Bamigbade said. "The people must see you." Marown Cage nodded, as she had learned to do all her life. Later that afternoon, her father's car slowed near the village school. Through the window, Marown Cage saw him. Adiwale, walking alone, dust clinging to his trousers, his posture calm despite the weight on his shoulders. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Something stirred inside her, not pity, not curiosity, but recognition, a feeling she could not explain. That night, Marown Cage lay awake on silk sheets, unaware that far beyond her father's walls, a sound long buried was beginning to rise. Some sounds are not meant to be heard, because once you hear them, your life changes forever. The forest behind Ayanfe had rules. Do not wander at night. Do not whistle among the trees. And never touch what sleeps beneath the roots. That night, the wind broke the rules first. Deep within the forest, beneath tangled roots and forgotten sacrifices, an ancient talking drum shifted. Its leather tightened, its wooden body warmed, its spirit listened. Miles away, Adiwale woke suddenly, his body soaked in sweat. In his dream, a voice had called his name, not with words, but with rhythm. Gun, gun, gun. His chest ached as if something inside him had been pulled awake. At the same time, Baba Afasian, the blind priest, sat upright inside his shrine. Cowrie shells rattled softly as he reached for his staff. "The blood has returned," he whispered. Thunder rolled across the sky, though no clouds gathered. The drum had waited for decades. And by morning, the village would celebrate, unaware that destiny had already chosen its heir. Morning arrived dressed in color. Drums echoed across Ayanfe as women swept their compounds and men tied wrappers around their waists. Smoke from cooking fires rose into the sky, carrying the smell of pepper soup and roasted corn. Today was a festival of masks, a celebration meant to honor the ancestors and entertain the living. Adiwale arrived early, helping arrange wooden benches near the village square. He worked quietly, unnoticed, his hands steady even as excitement buzzed around him. Laughter erupted when masquerades appeared, towering figures dressed in raffia and cloth, faces hidden behind carved wooden masks. Children screamed and ran, half afraid, half thrilled. Then the crowd parted. Chief Bamigbade arrived like royalty. His agbada flowed heavily around him, richly embroidered, his coral beads glowing in the sun. Beside him walked Moraunkeji. She looked different in daylight. Her beauty was calm, not loud. As her eyes scanned the crowd, they found Adewale standing at the edge of the square. For a moment, the world seemed to slow. Adewale felt it too, the strange pull in his chest, the same one that had followed him since the night of the dream. He looked away first. Whispers followed him. Why is he standing there? Does he think he belongs? One of the wealthy boys stepped forward and laughed loudly, spilling palm wine on Adewale's feet. Careful, the boy said. This ground is for people who matter. Laughter followed. Adewale clenched his fist but said nothing. Moraunkeji watched, her smile fading. And somewhere beyond the village, unseen and unheard, the forest listened. By afternoon, the sun burned fiercely overhead. A competition was announced. Young men would race to retrieve a carved staff placed near the forest edge. The winner would receive praise and a small reward from the chief himself. Adewale did not plan to join, but someone pushed him forward. Let the poor boy try, a voice mocked. Maybe hunger will make him fast. The crowd laughed again. Chief Bamigbade watched with mild interest, his face unreadable. Before Adewale could protest, the horn sounded. He ran, bare feet striking red earth, heart pounding, breath sharp in his chest. He ran not for pride, but to escape the laughter chasing him. As he neared the forest edge, a sudden stillness fell. The birds went silent. The wind paused. Adewale slowed. Something was wrong. The carved staff lay untouched, but the ground beneath it felt alive. A strange vibration moved through his legs, up into his chest. He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the wood, a deep sound rolled through the air. Gun! The earth trembled slightly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adewale stumbled backward, fear flashing across his face. The sound faded as quickly as it came. What was that? Someone whispered. Chief Bamigbade stood abruptly. Moraunkeji's heart raced. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. The festival ended early that day, and for the first time in many years, fear walked openly through Ayanfe. That night, Barber Fassian sent for the elders. Inside his dim shrine, oil lamps flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Cowrie shells lined the floor. The blind priest sat upright, his staff resting across his knees. The forest has spoken, he said calmly. One elder scoffed. It was only a sound. Barber Fassian turned his clouded eyes toward the man. No, he said. It was a memory. Silence followed. The drum is waking, the priest continued, and it does not wake for just anyone. The elders shifted uneasily. Across the village, Adewale lay awake on his mat. His hand still tingled where he had touched the staff. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the sound again, steady, calling, patient. In another compound, Moraunkeji sat by her window, staring into the dark. She could not forget the look on Adewale's face. Not pride, not fear, but confusion, as though something inside him had been stirred without his permission. Before dawn, Barber Fassian whispered a warning to the night air. When blood remembers, he said, lies begin to bleed. And far away, beneath roots and soil, the drum waited. 3 nights passed after the festival, but sleep refused to stay with Adewale. Each time he closed his eyes, the same rhythm returned. Not loud, not threatening, just steady, patient, as though something ancient was waiting for him to understand. On the 4th night, he gave in. The moon hung low as Adewale slipped out of his mother's hut. The village slept, unaware that one of its forgotten sons was walking toward destiny. The forest welcomed him with silence. Every step felt heavier than the last, yet his feet moved as if guided. He did not know where he was going, only that he was not alone. Then he saw it. Half buried beneath tangled roots lay the drum. Its leather skin was darkened by age, its wooden body carved with symbols worn smooth by time. Adewale knelt. The moment his hand hovered above it, the forest breathed. Gun. Not through the air, but through his chest. Tears filled his eyes, though he did not know why. He touched the drum, and for the first time, it answered fully. The sound rolled deep and low, carrying sorrow, pride, and memory. Adewale pulled back in fear, but the drum did not stop. It had found him. Baba Afasian did not sleep that night. Before dawn, he stood at the edge of the forest, his star planted firmly in the soil. When Adewale emerged, pale and shaken, the blind priest was already waiting. "You heard it," Baba Afasian said. Adewale froze. "I didn't mean to." The drum called. The priest interrupted. "You only answered." They sat beneath a tree as the sky slowly lightened. Baba Afasian spoke of kings whose names were erased, of bloodlines cut short by greed, of a village that chose comfort over truth. "The drum remembers what people try to forget," he said, "and it never calls without purpose." Adewale shook his head. "I am nobody." The priest smiled sadly. "That is what they wanted you to believe." Before Adewale could ask more, footsteps approached. The priest stood quickly. "Go, for now." As Adewale disappeared into the village, Baba Afasian whispered words meant for the ancestors alone. "The heir has heard the call." Maroun Keji noticed the change immediately. Adewale no longer walked with his head lowered. He was quieter than before, but there was weight in his silence, something steady, something unmovable. She found him near the stream one afternoon. They spoke cautiously at first, as though the air itself was listening. Adewale told her nothing of a drum, yet she sensed a storm behind his calm. Her father noticed too. "You will stop talking to that boy," Chief Bamigbaid said one evening, his voice sharp. "People are beginning to talk." Maroun Keji stood her ground. "About what?" "About things that should remain buried." His eyes darkened. "You belong to a different world." That night, guards were posted closer to her room. Chains made of gold were still chains. And Maroun Keji began to understand that her father feeds something more than gossip. He feared the past. The next market day, whispers filled the air. Someone claimed Adewale had been seen leaving the forest at night. Another said strange sounds followed him wherever he went. By midday, the lie had grown teeth. A missing goat was blamed on him. When the accusation reached Chief Bamigbaid, he did not hesitate. "Bring the boy," he ordered. Adewale stood in the square once more, surrounded by accusing voices. His mother wept quietly at the edge of the crowd. As the chief raised his hand to speak, a low sound rolled through the air gun. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. People screamed. Some fell to their knees. Chief Bamigbaid staggered back, fear flashing across his face before he could hide it. Adewale stood frozen, heart pounding. The drum had spoken without being touched, and the village, for the first time, understood one thing clearly. The past was no longer willing to stay silent. After the market day, the village avoided Adewale. Women pulled their children closer when he passed. Men watched him with suspicion, fear hiding behind their eyes. Even those who once mocked him now kept their distance. Only Maroun Keji did not turn away. They met in quiet places, by the stream, beneath the old mango tree, in moments stolen from watchful eyes. They spoke little at first. Words felt dangerous. Yet in silence, something grew. Maroun Keji listened when Adewale spoke of hunger, of his mother's tired hands, of dreams he never allowed himself to dream fully. Adewale listened when Maroun Keji spoke of loneliness inside wealth, of being seen but never known. Their world should never have touched. But they did, and once they touched, neither could pretend otherwise. Chief Bamigbaid summoned the elders at night. Palm wine sat untouched as he paced the room. His voice was low, controlled, but fear pressed against every word. "The boy must be watched," he said. "The forest does not speak without reason." One elder shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should listen." The chief stopped pacing. "There are things," he said slowly, "that must never return." Silence followed. That night, guards were sent to patrol the forest paths. Offerings were made, not for peace, but for silence. Yet fear does not obey money, and memory does not obey power. Adewale's mother fell ill. As he tended to her, wiping her forehead with a damp cloth, she studied his face for a long time, as though seeing him clearly for the first time. "There are things I should have told you," she whispered. From beneath her wrapper, she revealed an old scar, thin, deliberate. shaped like a symbol long forgotten by the village. Ediwale stared. "It is a mark of protection," she said weakly. "Your father bore the same." He asked her questions, but strength failed her. Before sleep claimed her, she held his hand tightly. "Whatever calls you," she murmured, "answer with honor." That night, the drums sounded once. Soft, almost gentle. Moran Keiji was locked inside her compound the following morning. Her father's order was final. "You will not see him again," Chief Bamigbade said. "This foolishness ends now." But love, once awakened, does not return to sleep easily. That night, Moran Keiji escaped through a servant's path and found Ediwale waiting near the stream. She told him everything. Fear passed between them like a living thing. "If this continues," Ediwale said quietly, "you will lose everything." Moran Keiji shook her head. "I already have." They did not touch. They did not need to. Above them, unseen, clouds gathered. The following day, the drum was gone. The forest stood empty where it once slept. Panic spread quickly. Barber Afasian arrived at the clearing too late, his staff trembling in his hands. "They have taken it," he said. Before nightfall, soldiers from a neighboring town arrived. Ediwale was accused openly of witchcraft, of theft, of bringing disaster upon the village. He was seized at dusk. As ropes tightened around his wrists, thunder cracked across the sky. Far away, the drum rejected unfamiliar hands. And for the first time, blood answered blood. Ediwale was dragged through the village as night swallowed the sky. Ropes burned into his wrists. Voices surrounded him, some angry, some afraid, most uncertain. His mother cried out once before being held back by neighbors who feared being seen beside her. At the edge of the square, the soldiers hesitated. The air felt heavy. Then the sound came again. Gun. Not loud, not threatening, but firm, like a reminder. The ropes loosened in the soldiers' hands without explanation. One man stumbled backward, eyes wide. "This boy is trouble," another muttered. Chief Bamigbade arrived moments later, his face calm, his heart racing. "Take him away from here," he said, "before the village tears itself apart." And so, under the cover of confusion and fear, Ediwale was pushed beyond the village boundary. Exile without judgment, punishment without proof. Ediwale walked alone. The road stretched endlessly ahead, dry and unforgiving. Every step carried the weight of questions he had no answers to. Who was his father? Why did the drum answer him? Why did the village fear him more than its own lives? By nightfall, his feet bled. He collapsed near an abandoned hunter's shelter, breath shallow, body trembling. Hunger gnawed at him, but sleep came anyway, deep and heavy. In his dream, the drum spoke again, not in sound, in images. A throne overturned, a man betrayed, a child hidden in darkness. Ediwale woke before dawn, tears on his face. He did not yet understand the dream, but he knew one thing. There was no going back unchanged. The hunter found him at sunrise, an old man with scarred arms and eyes sharp as cut stone. He studied Ediwale silently, then nodded as if confirming a long-held suspicion. "You walk like your father," the hunter said. Ediwale's breath caught. The hunter introduced himself as Badamosi, a man who once served the old palace before it fell into ruin. He spoke of a young king betrayed by those he trusted, of a child smuggled away at night, of a drum hidden so the truth would not rise again. When Ediwale showed him the symbol his mother bore, the hunter knelt. "The blood was not broken," he said softly, "only delayed." For the first time, Ediwale heard the truth spoken aloud, and it terrified him. Back in Ayanfe, Moran Keiji lived like a ghost inside her father's house. Her doors were guarded. Her steps were watched. Even the servants avoided her eyes. When she demanded answers, Chief Bamigbade gave her silence. When she demanded justice, he gave her anger. "You think love makes you brave," he said, "but love will destroy you." Moran Keiji looked at him and finally saw the fear beneath his power. That night, she pressed her forehead to the floor and cried, not for Ediwale alone, but for a village poisoned by secrets. Outside, thunder rolled again, and the elders began to fall sick. Far from the village, hidden inside a locked storehouse, the drum lay silent. Men had tried to play it, to command it, to sell it. Each attempt ended the same. Cracked skin, broken fingers, unexplainable illness. The drum did not belong to thieves. As Ediwale stood beside the hunter's fire, the rhythm rose again, stronger, clearer, closer. He placed his hand on his chest. "I hear it," he said. Badamosi nodded. "Then it is time." Above them, the sky split with lightning. The drum was no longer waiting, and the path back to Ayanfe had begun to open. The days that followed changed Ediwale. Under Badamosi's watchful eye, he learned to listen, not just with his ears, but with his spirit. The hunter taught him the old ways, how to read the wind, how to hear warnings in silence, how to stand without fear. At night, the drum visited his dreams again. This time, it did not whisper. It demanded. Ediwale saw visions of the village as it once was, peaceful, united, ruled by a king whose voice carried justice. He felt the pain of betrayal like a blade in his back. Each morning, he woke stronger. The boy who had been chased away by shame was fading. Something older was rising in his place. Baba Fassian could wait no longer. Despite his blindness, he walked alone into the forest before dawn, guided by memory and faith. Inside a hidden clearing, he prepared what had not been prepared in decades. He lit sacred lamps. He poured libation. He spoke names the village no longer dared to remember. As his voice rose, the ground trembled. The drum answered from afar. The priest smiled through tears. "The line lives," he said, "and the land will know its child again." But rituals awaken more than hope. They awaken enemies. Ayanfe began to suffer. Crops failed without reason. Children fell ill overnight. The river ran low, then bitter. The elders gathered in fear. Some spoke the truth quietly. Others denied it loudly. Chief Bamigbade watched the village weaken and felt his control slipping. The sickness did not respect wealth. It did not respect power. At night, he dreamed of drums chasing him through fire. He woke sweating, clutching his chest. The land was rejecting its lies. When Moraunkeji heard the elders whispering the truth, she knew her path was clear. She confronted her father at last. "You stole more than a throne," she said. "You stole our future." Chief Bamigbade raised his hand, but it fell back to his side. For the first time, he could not command her. That night, Moraunkeji escaped the compound under cover of rain. She carried no jewelry, no fine cloth, only courage. She did not know where Ediwale was. She only knew she would stand beside him, whatever the cost. Far from the village, Ediwale felt it. The pull. The drum's rhythm no longer came from dreams alone. It moved through his waking hours, steady and undeniable. "The time has come," Badamosi said. Ediwale looked toward the road that led back to Ayanfe, the same road he had walked in shame. This time, his steps were firm. Behind him, the past burned. Ahead of him, truth waited. And the village that forgot its king was about to remember. They waited for him where the road narrowed. 5 men stood between the trees, faces hidden beneath cloth, weapons resting too easily in their hands. They had been paid well. Silence was part of the bargain. Ediwale sensed them before he saw them. The rhythm in his chest slowed, then sharpened. When the first man stepped forward, Ediwale did not run. He stood still. The forest seemed to lean closer. A blade flashed. A shout followed. But before steel could find flesh, the ground shook violently. Birds exploded into the sky. The men staggered, terror breaking through their bravado. "Gun!" The sound did not come from the trees. It came from Ediwale. They fled, leaving their weapons behind. Ediwale exhaled slowly, hands trembling. He had not touched the drum, yet it had answered. Back in Ayanfe, the stolen drum was dragged into the village square. The elders, desperate and afraid, demanded it be played publicly to calm the land. A young drummer stepped forward. The first strike split the drum skin. He screamed as blood poured from his palms. Another tried. The same result. Panic spread. The drum lay silent again, unbroken but unwilling, its message clear to all who watched. This sound was not for sale. This power was not borrowed. The elders finally spoke the words they had avoided for decades. The rightful blood must return. Chief Bamigbade listened from the shadows and planned murder. Moran Keiji walked for 2 days. Her feet blistered. Her body ached. But she did not stop. At dusk on the 2nd day, she heard it, the rhythm she had never heard before, yet somehow recognized. She followed the sound. When she saw Ediwale standing by the fire, taller, calmer, changed, tears filled her eyes. They said nothing for a long moment. Then Ediwale spoke. "I was chased away," he said. "If I return, it will be with truth." Moran Keiji nodded. "Then I will return with you." The wind shifted. Far away, Chief Bamigbade felt it and knew time was no longer on his side. The chief's voice did not shake as he gave the command. "End it," he said. "Tonight." Loyal men were promised land. Others were promised silence. They moved quickly, carrying fire and steel toward the outskirts of the village. But the land was listening now. Dogs howled without reason. Lamps went out. The moon vanished behind clouds. As the men advanced, the rhythm rose, not loud, but everywhere. Their courage drained away. Some dropped their weapons and ran. Others collapsed, clutching their chests. The order failed, and fear finally chose a side. By morning, Ayanfe was barely holding itself together. People argued openly. Elders accused one another. Offerings were made without faith. Chief Bamigbade sat alone, staring at hands that had once commanded obedience. Outside the village, Adiwale and Moran Keiji stood together on the ridge overlooking the land. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Drums lay untouched. "The village is breaking," Moran Keiji said. Adiwale nodded. Then truth must arrive before ruin. The rhythm in his chest steadied. The final return was no longer a question of if, only when. Adiwale did not enter Ayanfe in secret. At dawn, he walked the main road with steady steps, Moran Keiji beside him. Villagers froze where they stood, some dropping baskets, others clutching their children. No one laughed. No one spoke. They felt it before they understood it. The air itself seemed to recognize him. When Ediwale reached the square, he stopped. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He simply stood, and the land leaned in to listen. The stolen drum was brought out at last. Hands trembled as it was placed before Ediwale. The elders watched with held breath. Chief Bamigbade stood rigid, his face carved from fear and pride. Ediwale knelt. He did not strike the drum. He touched it. The sound that followed was not loud, but it carried weight. It rolled across the square, into the houses, into the bones of the people. Images filled the air like memory given shape. A king betrayed, a throne stolen, a child hidden to save a bloodline. Cries broke out. The drum had spoken truth without mercy. Chief Bamigbade stepped forward, shaking. "Lies!" he shouted. "Tricks of witchcraft." But his voice cracked. The elders turned away from him, one by one. Guards loosened their grips on their weapons. Moran Keiji moved to Ediwale's side. The chief looked at his daughter and saw judgment in her silence. His knees buckled. The power he had stolen no longer recognized him. The village waited for punishment. They waited for exile, for death, for revenge. Adiwale raised his hand. "There's been enough blood," he said quietly. "Truth does not need more." Chief Bamigbade was stripped of titles, land, and voice. He was left with life and memory. Some said mercy was weakness. The land did not agree. The wind softened. The air eased. The ancestors were listening. That night, rain fell gently for the first time in many weeks. Crops drank deeply. The river cleared. Children slept without fever. The drum rested in its shrine, silent once more, not asleep, but satisfied. Adiwale stood at the edge of the square as villagers gathered cautiously around him. He was no longer invisible. But the greatest test still waited ahead, because ruling a broken village requires more than truth. It requires sacrifice. Peace did not arrive with celebration. Instead, it came quietly, like a careful visitor unsure of its welcome. Villagers looked to Ediwale for direction, men who once ignored him, women who once pitied him. Every word he spoke carried weight now, and he felt it settle on his shoulders like stone. At night, he stood alone, listening to the village breathe. Leadership, he learned, was heavier than hunger. The drum remained silent, watching. Baba Afasian summoned Ediwale before dawn. Inside the shrine, the priest's voice was calm but firm. "The land has accepted you," he said, "but balance still demands payment." Adewale's chest tightened. "Not blood," the priest continued, "but surrender." Adewale understood. Power that comes from ancestors must not cling to pride. That evening, he called the elders together. What he would say would change everything. Before Adewale could speak to the elders, Maroun Keji stepped forward. "I will not inherit my father's wealth," she said clearly. "Let it return to the people it was taken from." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She removed her coral beads and placed them on the ground. "I choose this land," she said, "not comfort built on lies." Adewale watched her, heart full and aching at once. Sacrifice, he realized, was love given form. When the elders knelt before Adewale, he lifted them up. "I will not sit above you," he said. "I will stand among you." Murmurs spread. He returned lands of families who had lost them. He opened storehouses. He invited voices once silenced. Some called it weakness. The land answered with abundance. Rain came on time. Harvest grew strong. The drum slept peacefully. Chief Bamigbaid left the village at dawn. No gods followed him. No curses chased him. He walked alone, carrying the weight of memory. As he crossed the boundary, the wind rose briefly, then settled. A chapter closed, and Ayanfe stepped fully into its future. The elders declared a new festival, one not born of fear or display, but of remembrance. Drums sounded again, not the ancient one, but many hands beating many skins, weaving joy instead of warning. Dancers filled the square. Children laughed without glancing over their shoulders. Adewale watched from a distance. This celebration was not for him. It was for the land. At sunset, Baba Fassian led Adewale into the forest one last time. They returned the drum to its resting place, beneath roots older than the village itself. Adewale touched it gently, gratitude steady in his chest. The drum answered once. Soft, final. Then it slept. Not forgotten. Never forgotten. Peace brought its own trials. Arguments rose over boundaries. Old grudges surfaced. Some questioned Adewale's mercy, whispering that strength should have punished harder. Adewale listened. He settled disputes with patience. He refused to rule by fear. Slowly, the whispers faded. Peace, unlike power, needed time to grow. Maroun Keji was offered a life beyond the village. Relatives from the city came with promises, education, comfort, distance from old scars. She stood at the crossroads at dawn, looking toward a future that glittered and one that breathed. She turned back. Some choices are not made with the mind. They are made with the soul. Adewale rebuilt the school. He restored the old palace ruins into a gathering hall, not a throne room. Stories were taught alongside lessons, so children would know where they came from. Memory became protection. The land responded with quiet gratitude. There was no lavish ceremony, no gold thrown into the air. Adewale and Maroun Keji stood before the elders, hands joined, eyes clear. Their union was simple and unbreakable. Years passed. Children gathered around fires at night, listening to elders speak of the drum that remembered blood, of a village that chose truth over comfort. They listened carefully, because they understood now. Forgetting has a price. Sometimes, on quiet nights, the wind carried a rhythm through the trees. Not a warning, not a command, a reminder. The drum was still there, watching, waiting. Ayanfe became known not for its past crimes, but for its courage. Travelers came to learn how a village healed itself without war. The answer was always the same. Truth. Somewhere beneath the forest floor, the drum slept. It would not wake for laughter or pride, only if blood was betrayed again. And so the story lived on, not as a threat, but as a promise, that as long as memory is honored, the land will endure.